Hey YouTube, Rob here, bringing you another video. Today I'm doing another DVD Blu-ray update, I think for March 2014. Just some movies that I've sort of bought recently and sort of got around to watching. Yeah, so we'll make a start. Street Fighter, I think from the 90s. Yeah, 1994. People haven't sort of seen. I did sort of watch this in the cinema when it first came out, and I pretty much couldn't remember anything about it. But I did sort of wanted to rewatch it again, and I have sort of heard people reckon it was pretty terrible. So yeah, I did sort of get around to watching it, and yeah, it's not a particularly great movie really. It's obviously based on the the Street Fighter video game, and it's a bit I don't know. I don't want to use the word strange. It's not that strange. It's just that you think if they were going to make a movie, they'd probably try to include perhaps something to do perhaps more with the game itself. But it just sort of seems like they've just sort of used the characters from the game and sort of just made up this completely sort of fictional story. Sort of cashing on the success of the video game sort of thing. It's got a few stars on it, Van Damme and who's the other guy? Raul Julia, who was Gomez Adams from the Addams Family movies. Also has got Kylie Minogue in it, Kylie, with her. She's trying to do like a British accent, and it's not too bad, I suppose. I just sort of found it interesting that she was doing a British accent. But yeah, it's not necessarily a terrible film, I suppose. But it does have a few sort of silly moments to it, and they're sort of trying to make a few sort of jokes here and there and add a bit of comedy to it, and it doesn't really quite work, I don't think. But I guess it's not bad, I suppose, for sort of a B-grade top action style type movie, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a fun watch sort of thing, but yeah, it wasn't that great really. Yeah, so that's Street Fighter. Second film is actually a film I wasn't really too sure if I was going to include it in this update or not. It's a movie I have sort of heard a few people sort of recommend, and they did actually quite enjoy it. And I did sort of watch it, and to be honest, I didn't sort of enjoy it as much as I was sort of hoping to. And I don't sort of because people sort of recommend these movies to you, and it's a really great movie. Check it out, and you sort of watch it and you think, oh, that wasn't necessarily. I didn't think it was that great. So you don't really like sort of saying that you didn't really enjoy it. It's an Australian film, I think, from a few years ago. It's called Tomorrow When the World Began, and yeah, as before, people have been recommending it to me, and I wouldn't say it was a bad film. I wouldn't say that at all. Yeah, the film itself is based on a book by John Marsden. And I guess, I don't know, perhaps I'm being perhaps a little bit too hard on it, because I think the film, or the book itself and the film is what's the word for here? Made for sort of, I guess, young adults, sort of young teenagers sort of thing. And I guess me being an adult, a mature adult, if I can call myself that, I just sort of found it a little bit, I don't know, perhaps a bit sort of childish, if I can sort of perhaps use that word. I mean, I did actually quite like the premise to it, though. It's sort of about, I think it's 8 kids, and they sort of go on like a camping trip for over the weekend, and when they sort of get back from their camping trip, they sort of find that war's been declared, sort of thing, on them. So there's just sort of this sort of unknown sort of Asian force. We don't know. It isn't sort of named in the. Well, I think it's both the book and the movie. It's not sort of mentioned who this particular sort of Asian army is, sort of thing, that's sort of coming to town and just sort of taken over. Yeah, just sort of these, I guess some are sort of average kids, and they just sort of want to try and sort of defeat or outwit this sort of Asian army, which I just sort of found just a little bit sort of unbelievable. I mean, the kids were, I don't know, to me they were doing a lot of really sort of stupid things, and I don't really sort of quite know how they sort of managed to sort of outwit this, I guess in some ways, a bit highly trained army. But I mean, the film, yeah, I did actually quite like the premise to it, though, because I thought it was some ways a bit of a sort of an update, I suppose, or sort of a modern version of, I guess I could sort of say World War II or something, and you know what it was like, I suppose, sort of, you know, going through World War II, and I guess because I guess now sort of, you know, because I wasn't alive, you know, during World War II, so I have no idea what it would have been like to sort of, you know, go through war and, you know, stuff like that. So I suppose in some ways this is a bit of a sort of an update for the current generation to sort of know what it was like, I guess. Which I thought was, yeah, great premise. I just sort of found it just unbelievable, these young teenagers that didn't seem particularly bright to manage to sort of defeat the army. But I mean, it wasn't necessarily a bad film. I mean, you know, the decent sort of acting to it, and you know, mostly likable characters and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know, I just couldn't sort of buy into it. I mean, because yeah, it is sort of aimed towards young adults, I suppose, young teenagers. So I suppose they would perhaps relate to it, and how they've, you know, they could sort of put themselves in the role and, you know, defeat this, you know, army all by themselves, you know, type thing. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, that's yeah. But anyway, so that's Tomorrow When the World Began. There's a few horror movies which I sort of picked up. This one here is actually one that's been highly recommended. One of the best sort of horror movies that came out, I think, from last year. So I decided to pick it up and give it a watch. It's The Conjuring, which I said before, I have heard lots of really great things about, and I did actually quite enjoy this one. I thought it was actually, yeah, a really good movie, this one. Really sort of lots of sort of tension to it, and great sort of scenes to it, and very intense, I think, especially the last sort of half an hour or 45 minutes or so. I thought that was just really intense and really sort of, you know, on the edge of your seat, you know, type stuff. Based on a true story about these two paranormal investigators. What were their names? Lorraine and Ed Warren, who I think was one of the very sort of first, apparently one of the very first sort of pioneers, I guess, of paranormal activity, investigating. Just sort of about this family that sort of moves into this new house, and so they sort of find that it's been haunted. So these this husband and wife team, the two investigators, they sort of come and help the family out, you know, try and get rid of this this evil spirit, or evil spirits. But yeah, a really good movie though. I really did actually quite enjoy it. A few sort of perhaps cliched moments here and there, but I suppose, I don't know, based on true story, I suppose it's, you know, I guess in some ways it's got to, you know, it might be a bit cliched. I did sort of read a little bit behind the film, and apparently the real family that sort of this is sort of based on apparently actually lived in the house for 10 years while this was sort of going on, and I don't see how I couldn't stand living in a house like that. Well, especially, you know, the way I was portraying the movie. I couldn't live in that house like that for 10 years. No way. I wouldn't last a couple of days, I don't reckon, or even one day, I reckon. I thought you'd sort of read up that some people reckon that the two, you know, paranormal investigators are, you know, some people reckon they're, you know, a pair of sort of con artists. Some people don't quite believe what they claim to do, but other people do, I suppose, though, because they're, you know, quite, from what I understand, quite respected, you know, obviously because they were the, you know, pioneers, I guess. But yeah, I don't know, I just thought it was really a pretty good movie, just great sort of suspense to it, great sort of eerie moments, and you know, quite terrifying in some spots. I actually quite liked the mother. I thought she was a really good actor at it too. She put a really good performance, and she was actually in sort of the latest seasons of the TV show 6 Feet Under, which I thought that's a really great show too. Yeah, definitely a good movie though. I definitely would recommend that one, The Conjuring. A few more horror ones. One I did sort of show in my last update, I think. From the 13th Part 2, which I've never sort of seen before. This is actually really good too. I actually quite enjoyed this one. So I think it's set 5 years after the first movie, and again, sort of these, you know, camp counsellors are setting up a new camp, and you know, they're sort of warned not to go up there, you know, not to go anywhere near Crystal Lake, but you know, of course they do, and you know, sort of get picked off one by one, murdered. But yeah, I don't know, just a really good, you know, classic, you know, sort of horror movie, I guess. Good sort of kills to it, lots of blood, and So very attractive looking women in it too. You know, running around and topless and sex scenes and stuff in it. So I enjoyed that part of it. But you know, seriously, they were actually, yeah, really attractive. Some of the main females in it. Amy Steele and was it Marta Koberg or something, who I think later became a... I've read up a bit on her bio, and apparently she's you know, a bit of a druggie now, and has been arrested a few times for certain things, which is a bit sad. Yeah, Friday the 13th Part 2. Then I watched Friday the 13th Part 3, which I don't think wasn't quite as good as perhaps Part 3, but it's still, you know, still quite enjoyable. This is a film we sort of get the introduction to, you know, Jason's mask. This is sort of the film where it first appears. Yeah, this is a good movie too, though. Good sort of fun watch. I've supposed to watch the rest of them. I've seen the first one quite a few times, but this is sort of the first time I've ever sort of seen you know, Part 2 and Part 3. So I should perhaps, you know, watch the rest, I reckon. So that's Part 3. Another film I did sort of show in my last update, which I hadn't sort of watched at that point. Still Trap, which I did only get because it was rated R18, because I thought I was in the mood to sort of watch something that was a bit, you know, a bit adult. This gets absolutely terrible reviews online. I think it's like 4.4 or something on IMDb, which I think is just absolutely ridiculous. I actually thought this was actually a pretty good movie. I mean, it's not like a masterpiece, you know, as they say. But I thought it was actually pretty good. I thought it was actually, you know, quite up there and very entertaining and a good sort of fun watch. I mean, I couldn't pretty much, I mean, you know, it's not a masterpiece, but there's nothing I could really say that I didn't really like about it necessarily. I thought the premise to it was, you know, pretty good, and the acting was fairly good, and some good kills to it, and just, yeah, very well made, you know, sort of lower budget, you know, type movie, I guess. It's actually sort of about, sort of set on New Year's Eve, and I think it's a party of like, I think there's sort of this party going on, and these, I think it's like 4 or 5 people will get this sort of, you know, anonymous text message on their phone and inviting them to go to the 27th floor and go to the, you know, the VIP party, you know, type thing. So they're a bit, you know, a bit curious, of course. So they, you know, go there, and there's a table there with, you know, party cake on it, and, you know, sort of a cryptic note and sort of clues for them to sort of follow, type thing. So they, you know, they're sort of quite excited to start off with, because it's a bit of a treasure hunt, you know, type thing, I guess. But of course they don't get, you know, that sort of goes away when after the, you know, first kill and one of them's killed off, they sort of start think, well, this might not be necessarily a good thing. It's I did sort of guess the killer. I mean, pretty much. I mean, towards the end of the movie though, a lot late in the movie. I think it's probably like, you know, 5 or 10 minutes before the, you know, the big reveal type of thing. And you know, I've sort of read it somewhere that someone reckoned that they pretty much picked the killer straight away as soon as they started watching the film. But you know, you don't sure if I want to believe that or not. But yeah, I don't know what, you know. So I can't really think of anything really that I didn't really necessarily thought was bad about it. I mean, it was a low budget, you know, horror type flick. A bit of a sort of a copy of, you know, the Saw movies, or, you know, the Cube movies, I guess. But nothing wrong with that. I didn't think. I still thought it was, you know, sort of held its own, you know, type thing. Yeah, Still Trap. I would recommend it if you sort of find it cheap. Nothing amazing, but I quite enjoyed it, and definitely a film I probably would watch again, you know, a year down the track or 2 years down the track or something. It's just sort of a fun sort of watch to, you know, sort of burn an hour and a half or so, you know. Yeah, so that's that one. 2 more to go. Another horror movie. This one's from the 70s, 1976 I think it is, yeah. Yeah. On the Cinema Cult sort of releases. This is actually sort of a double feature, actually, of Lisa and the Devil, and the other one's House of Exorcism. They're actually sort of essentially the same film. Lisa and the Devil's sort of the original version, the director's cut, I suppose, and then the studio came along and sort of didn't think that was going to be a commercial success, so they sort of did their own version of it, sort of cut out bits and added their own sort of exorcism type storyline to it to sort of cash in, because I think the Exorcism movie, just sort of came out recently. That was really popular, and so they sort of, were trying to cash in on that. So they sort of recut the film. So I've only sort of watched the Lisa and the Devil, sort of the director's version, I guess. It did sort of remind me a lot of sort of the Hammer horror type movies. I did sort of watch a fair few of them when I was younger, and actually quite enjoyed them. And this is very sort of similar sort of themes to it and storyline to it. So I don't know if necessarily, I think this might have even came past before the Hammer horror movies, I guess. I don't know. Since she's sort of about Lisa here, and she's sort of on a holiday in Spain with her friend, and she sort of takes a wrong turn down an alleyway and sort of gets lost and can't sort of find her way back to the sort of the main square, or the main part of the city. And then of course the night falls and the fog starts to roll in, and she sort of gets a bit scared. Then of course out of nowhere this car comes along, and they sort of pick her up, and but of course they broke down in front of this big sort of creepy mansion, sort of thing, and so they sort of have to ring the bell for help, and with this sort of strange family in there. There's sort of like a sort of strange family. They do sort of get invited in, and they do sort of spend the night, because the mechanic can't come, can't come and sort of fix the car till tomorrow type thing. So they're sort of forced to, spend the night. And of course, the family's a bit sort of, a bit creepy, and they sort of find out that one of the dead family members of the family is very similar looking to the girl here, sort of a doppelganger type thing, and an uncanny resemblance to her sort of thing. And I've sort of seen a lot of films, Hammer films, that sort of do follow these sort of similar sort of storyline to it. People sort of actually did. I did sort of quite enjoy it to a point. It was a little bit sort of bit long and did sort of drag on a bit, and it was perhaps a bit too sort of arty for me. I think it was sort of a bit sort of because you're not really quite sure what was happening, and what the sort of backstory of the family is type thing, and I have sort of been on IMDb, and some people have obviously sort of watched the film a few more times and have sort of dissected the storyline, and you can see they sort of have their own theory on what's happening, on because it is a bit sort of a bit arty type thing, Also stars Tony Savalas too. He's I actually don't mind him. He's did a lot of good things. He was probably most famous for the TV show Kojak, and he was in the James Bond film on Emergency Service, playing the villain. He was pretty good. Also in The Dirty Dozen and Hogan's Heroes, and also Escape from Athena. That's another good movie he was in. So I'm a bit of a fan of him. But yeah, I mean, it's probably a film that probably, if I did sort of watch a few more times, I might sort of, understand what was going on. But sometimes I don't really like sort of films that are sort of a bit like that, a bit sort of, you can't sort of quite follow what's going on. Sometimes I'd like to sort of know, what's going on. But these cinema cut ones are actually, releases are actually pretty good, I think. I actually sort of bought a few, actually. You can sort of see here behind me. Also bought these M&M tins too the other day. I thought they were pretty cool. From a second-hand store. But I don't know, it wasn't too bad, I suppose. I perhaps need to check out perhaps the weaker, sort of redone edition. That's Loose and the Devil. Okay, the final film is actually a foreign film. I think a German film from 2009. Directed by Michael Haneke. I think I've only sort of seen two of his films before, and one I actually quite enjoy. I can't remember the title of it though, which I thought was really good. Second one I watched was actually rather a bit long and boring. I thought this film here just sort of, it's a bit like the second movie that I sort of watched. It was perhaps a little bit long and boring, I thought. It's called The White Ribbon. So it's sort of set, I think, is it 1914? 1913, 1914. It's like a sort of small, sort of German village. Just before, I think, World War I sort of broke out. The film itself is just sort of set over a year in this sort of small town, and narrated by, I think, pretty sure he was like a school teacher. I think he's sort of like, when he's sort of narrating it, he's obviously like an old man, but in the film itself, he's actually quite young. So this is I think he's sort of telling the story that this, what sort of happened 1 year, when he was a lot younger. So it's sort of about, the film sort of starts off with the doctor of the village, and he's sort of riding home on his horse, and he's just about to sort of go through the gate, but someone sort of put this sort of like a tripwire sort of along the gate sort of thing, and of course the horse sort of trips over the sort of trip rope, and sort of falls over and sort of breaks his leg, and he sort of gets thrown off, and sort of breaks his leg as well. And then sort of a bit later on, other things sort of start to happen, like some of the local kids sort of get abducted and sort of like tied. One gets like tied to a tree and gets sort of whipped, and another one sort of goes missing and sort of found again a day or two later, and it's been tortured, and not particularly nice stuff. It's just sort of you're sort of watching the film to try to sort of find out who's behind it all, and why is this happening, and of course, I don't want to spoil it, but we don't sort of get any sort of conclusion. It's sort of just left up to your imagination on, I guess there's sort of clues there, I guess, of perhaps what happened, and I guess you've got to sort of try and work it out yourself type thing. It's not actually sort of, spelled out for you at the end of the movie, which is, I don't know, some ways I do like to sort of know what's happened sort of thing. I don't like to, think too hard sometimes, I don't know. So I think perhaps in some ways it went a bit over my head, perhaps, because I wasn't really quite sure what was happening. But I have sort of been, as I said before, I've been on IMDb, and some people that who obviously sort of watched the film quite a few times have actually sort of got their own ideas on what happened. Well, it's just perhaps a little bit hard to explain the movie, I suppose, really. It's, I guess in some ways we sort of, I don't perhaps want to spoil it too much, but I think it's just, definitely, she sort of got the parents, but they're actually there's no sort of names for them. They're only only given by their occupation sort of thing. So you've got like a doctor and a school teacher, and et cetera, et cetera. Whereas the kids themselves are actually they've all got their own names, and I think in some ways the kids are sort of, because it's sort of being I guess what was I say, 1913, 1914. The kids sort of at that time in history, I guess, were rather sort of well mannered sort of thing. They were rather they were told, they did what they were told, and very sort of quiet. They don't in the film they don't sort of talk that much. They don't sort of, you don't sort of see them talking to each other that much sort of thing. Or if we do, you can't sort of hear what they're saying type thing. Whereas, because I guess the parents are supposed to be the ones that are all in charge, and they're, they're the sort of, I guess they're the sort of they'd be perhaps the more interesting people, I suppose, to watch. But the film itself, I think, is more about the kids, even though we don't sort of hear them talking that much, or the film, they're not necessarily on camera that much. I think it's more their story than the parents' story, if that sort of makes sense. Because I think some ways we think perhaps the kids have got something, perhaps they sort of know, what's going on more than what the parents, because they sort of have no idea, why this is happening or who's doing it or anything. But we think that, even though but we sort of led to believe perhaps that the kids perhaps, know what's going on, even though we're not shown in the film, they never sort of speak or talk about it, and sort of see any of that. We only sort of see it from the parents' perspective, sort of thing, I suppose, in some ways. Anyway, that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I don't want to spoil it too much. But definitely, perhaps a film I perhaps need to watch again. I did sort of, as I said before, honestly sort of find it a little bit boring, and did sort of drag on a little bit. I did sort of find that the acting itself was not just sort of typical. I mean, it was very kind of like, I suppose, I don't want to sort of use the word documentary, but it was this sort of the actors were actually sort of playing themselves, sort of thing, like they were sort of amateur actors maybe, because they did sort of seem rather like if you're sort of watching like a documentary or something, where you sort of you know, people that are sort of being filmed, they're a bit nervous and a bit, you know, they're not sort of used to being in front of the camera. That's sort of the way I sort of found that they were a bit seemed a bit sort of nervous of the camera in some ways. I don't know. I don't know if that was sort of intentional or just or it's just as if sort of these people are sort of playing themselves, sort of thing. I guess that's the only way I can perhaps describe it. It wasn't sort of bad acting by any means. It was just that it was, to me, it just sort of seemed rather sort of like normal people were sort of as if they were sort of, you know, being filmed. You know, we're sort of used to being on camera, you know, type thing. But anyway, but yeah, definitely perhaps a film that I probably would definitely want to perhaps watch again, and I would perhaps recommend perhaps if you're sort of into sort of long films that, you know, have no real conclusion, or you can't sort of, on the surface, it's not sort of spit up to you. Anyway, so that's the White Ribbon, right? So that's my update, just some stuff that I picked up recently and managed to watch. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you've sort of seen any of these movies, you know, certainly leave me a comment and tell me your thoughts, and I'll be back very soon with another video for you. So for now, bye.